In the 16th century, Portuguese missionaries brought Catholicism to Vietnam. 100 years later, Father Alexander de Rose was the most influential in the spread of Catholicism and for the development of the Romanized script of the Vietnamese language. Emperor Gia Long rose to power in 1802 with his Confucian orthodoxy. Catholics were still free to practice their religion due to Emperor Long's close relationship with the French. However, Vietnamese Catholics did not have this luxury for long. Many of Long's successors, such as Minh Mang, did not tolerate the Catholic religion and began persecuting anyone who would deny the legitimacy of the emperor and instead favored God. 1802 was also the year that Vietnam achieved their manifest destiny. They were free of foreign control and were ruled by a single indigenous emperor. This destiny, however, only lasted 70 years. The French arrived to colonize Indochina, and this marked the beginning of yet another long struggle with foreign invasion. Spanning with the French, the Japanese after 1940, the Chinese in 1945, the French yet again until 1954, and finally the Americans. This led to an even greater division between the North and the South. The Communists of the North had long since betrayed the cause for which they claimed to be fighting for. However, no Vietnamese group felt the Communist betrayal more deeply than the Catholics. Catholics were accused of being elitist and high and mighty, and not purely Vietnamese in the eyes of the Communists. Their distinct historical patterns also led to the differential social structures, ethnic compositions, patterns of trade and commerce, and even religious ritual practices. The difference between the communist and non-communist nationalist forces within society affected the Catholic community. Catholics had reason to wonder if they had any future at all in the Democratic Republic of Vietnam. When the French phase of the war came to an end in 1954, Catholics in the North had to decide whether to stay or to flee to the South. The Geneva Accords had created a 300-day grace period for population transfers, from July 21, 1954 to May 21, 1955. For the 80% of Catholics who chose to flee the North, this was an excruciating decision. They abandoned their property, lives, and above all, the graves of their ancestors. Many Vietnamese fled the North due solely to fear. In Saigon, President Ngo Dinh Diem offered his very popular slogan, "God has gone south," to help motivate the poor Vietnamese. At this time, the French and Americans were offering relief aid to those fleeing the North for the South. When the Geneva Accords were signed, it was agreed that the country of Vietnam would be split between the two governments. Ho Chi Minh's communist government would rule in the North, and the Catholic leader Nguyen Dinh Diem would have a government in the South. The dividing area between the two governments was existent at the 17th parallel. It's at this time in 1954 that Operation Passage to Freedom was in effect. Operation Passage to Freedom was a term that was used by the United States Navy to describe the transportation of approximately 1 million Northerners to South Vietnam by both the United States and the French. An estimated 600,000 of these immigrants were Vietnamese Catholics from the North, wanting to escape the communist rule, and 200,000 were Protestants from the North. 2 out of every 3 immigrants were Catholic at this time. This migration largely boosted the Catholic power base in South Vietnam for Diem, because the majority of Vietnamese Catholics had previously lived in the North and now presided in the South. By early August of 1954, there were 200,000 refugees waiting at Hanoi and other ports to head to the South. For most, the main reason for them to migrate to the South was to flee from the communist aggression and hopefully live a better life under the newly elected Catholic ruler in the South, Nguyen Dinh Diem. Diem's government created Comigal, the government's resettlement agency that worked in cooperation with the United States, and Comigal was purely dedicated to refugee issues. United States ships alone transported over 300,000 passengers during Operation Passage to Freedom. There were more than 4,000 new arrivals per day, and so Northerners were housed in Saigon and other reception centers. The Catholics' reestablishment in South Vietnam under Nguyen Dinh Diem after the Geneva signing and with the help of Operation Passage to Freedom by U.S. and French forces gave them the chance to freely practice their religion once again.
Malamang later. Yeah. I don't know why I'm over here. This job is evil. They sent me here to Vietnam to kill in the